Hello everybody, welcome to my studio. I'm Lydia and today I'm going to show you how to adjust the Milkmaid blouse to fit your unique body, plus some stylistic changes. Today we'll be tackling all of these fit adjustments. Also, I'm including a bonus at the end. I'm going to show you how to stabilize this area of your unlined bodice. It's pretty easy, so stick around to the end if you want to see that. So without further ado, let's get started. For most of these alterations, I recommend that you make a toile in cheap fabric first, just to see how the original pattern fits. And then from there you can determine the proper amount to remove or add, because you'll have a reference point to look at. Also remember that this pattern has 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters of seam allowance all around, so just be aware of this as you're adding or reducing the pattern. Alright, let's start with the size and fit alterations. If your sleeve is falling off your shoulder, that ain't fun, that ain't good. You can make a simple change to the pattern. For the front, I'm going to eliminate the seam allowance by drawing a parallel line 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters from the cup cutout edge. Then I line up the edge of the cup with this line. That way the 1/2 inch seam allowance on both the bodice piece and cup is eliminated, completing the front armhole so we can make a smooth line. Establish the amount that you want to move it in at the top of the armhole, and then draw that new armhole, connecting it to the original underarm points on the back and front side bodice pieces. This is definitely something that you can adjust as you sew your garment, so you don't have to necessarily change this before. You can try it on, see how it fits, and then alter it pretty easily and quickly. Okay, next, I made my neckline quite high for my personal comfort. My brahingas ain't out to meet and greet, if you know what I'm saying. However, I know for some of you, this height is awkwardly too high, or you just prefer a lower neckline, and to that I say, to each their own. So let's start with the back because it's flat and it's easy. So say you want to lower the back by 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters. All you have to do is measure that much on the pattern and cut it off. The seam allowance will still be intact. For the front, you want to be a little more careful. This is why testing out the pattern on you first is smart, because then you can just determine how much you want to adjust it. I marked the seam allowance just so that you could see where it actually ends up. So if I also want to move the front down 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters, I'll measure from the top following the curve of the top. Notice that the bust tie channel location is 1 inch from the top of the original bust cup pattern. So measure the new bust tie channel location 1 inch from your new bust cup top. Cut the excess off and you're left with the neckline you always wanted. Brahingas come in all shapes and sizes, so I'm going to show you how to make this fit a larger or smaller cup size. Just so you know, the bust cup is based on a BC cup, so this bust cup height is based on the bust radius, which is measured from the nipple to under bust. So if we remove the 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top and bottom of the cup, and then measure that distance, we have 6.5. That's because my bust radius is about 3.25 inches, so I double it to get the diameter and to give me the full coverage that I want. This cup could definitely work for larger cup sizes, it just won't be as full coverage as it is on me. If you want to make this cup bigger or smaller, just draw a line down the center and a line to the armhole area and across to the center front of your bust cup. Cut these apart, leaving a tiny part of the center front and armhole intact. To enlarge this cup, place it on a piece of paper and spread your cup like I am showing you. You can spread it more or less based on what you want. Then you just tape it down when you're satisfied with the increase and smooth out the curves so that there are no jagged areas. Keep it smooth, not crunchy. And that is the bust cup enlarged. At this point, you can measure the height and see if it's as big as you want it in reference to your bust measurement. To shrink the cup, you just do the exact opposite. Instead of spreading the sections, you just overlap them. I'm only overlapping them a bit, but you can decide how much you want to do that. Again, you can measure your bust radius, double it to get the diameter, and measure your cup once you have adjusted it and see how it compares to your measurement and adjust it as desired. And don't forget to smooth out those crunchy areas and you're good to go. If you have a lower set bust, no problem girl, I got you. Simply take your 2 front bodice pieces and start by eliminating the seam allowance. I'm drawing a line 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, then overlap the other bodice piece, lining it up with this line, and you have eliminated the 1/2 inch seam allowance on each piece. I'm going to lower the setting by a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeters. You can do whatever height you want. So from the center front, I'm going to follow the shape of the bust and create a new line 1/2 an inch down until we get to the side curve of the bust. We don't really need to widen that area, so I'm going to draw a line following the shape of the side bust and connect it with my new lowered line. Then you would cut this off. If you want to raise the setting of the bust, you just do the exact opposite. And since I slightly widened the side bust a bit, I'm going to add that little area to the bust cup just so that it won't fit weirdly. And there we have it, a 1/2 inch lower bust setting. If you want to raise the setting of the bust, just do the exact opposite. If you find that this bodice piece is not quite reaching your waist and you need to lengthen it, I have a pattern alteration for you. Grab all 4 of your bodice pieces, start by marking a line across the bottom of your pieces. It could be in the middle too, just make sure that the line is either parallel to the hem shape or perpendicular to the grain line. The grain line is the line with arrows on each end. Then extend your grain line to the edge of each piece. Now cut off the bottom section of your pieces. Then draw a vertical line on your piece of paper that's quite a bit longer than each of your pieces. Next, place the top portion of the bodice pieces with the grain lines matching the lines you drew on the paper. Establish how much you want to lengthen the torso and measure that down from the bottom of your pieces. I'm measuring down 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. Place your bottom bodice pieces with the grain lines matching the vertical line on the sheet at your lengthening marker. Then connect the top point of each top bodice section to the bottom point of each bottom bodice section. This way we keep the same width at the waist while maintaining the same shape of the bodice panels, just elongated. Now let's say your bust measurement matches a size 4 and your waist matches the measurement for size 8. So no problem at all, simply print out those 2 sizes. You can choose a layer panel on Adobe Acrobat and toggle off all the sizes that you don't want. I have size 4 and 8 printed together here. All we have to do is connect the top point of size 4 to the bottom point of size 8. To make this clear for you, I'm going to highlight the tops of size 4 with this light blue pen and the bottoms of size 8 with this pink pen. Now that that is done, all we have to do is connect those points. It seems like such a subtle change, but it will really make a big difference fit-wise, and a bonus, keep the integrity of the bodice panel proportions. Now we've made it fit your unique measurements, let's move on to stylistic changes. This is where you can make the dress uniquely your own with a few adjustments. Some of you have requested that you want a more or less flared skirt, so I'm going to show you how to easily make this skirt into a full circle skirt or a quarter circle skirt. Just a heads up, this skirt piece is in quarter scale, which means I shrunk it down to 25% of its original size, just so that it's easier to show you. First thing we want to do for either a full or quarter circle skirt is create sections. Using the center front skirt piece as a reference, I'm going to create sections on the side back skirt panel. Then I'm going to cut from the hem to the waist, just leaving a tiny section intact. To create the circle skirt, we're going to take a larger piece of paper and draw a long vertical guideline more than double the length of this skirt. Place your center front skirt panel at the base of this line. Add your side back panel, making sure to complete the waist by touching the corner to the top center front skirt corner. Spread the skirt so that the center back of the skirt lines up with the guideline. Then just create an even spread of the skirt panels and tape it in place. Now we still have to separate the front center skirt piece, so find the halfway point between the 2 panels and draw a line through it from the waist. This is where you will cut to separate the 2 pattern pieces. Next, complete the hemline by filling in the gaps and cut out your 2 pieces. If you cut the center front unfold and the side back skirt twice as directed, you'll have a full circle for all that twirling glory. If you want a more sleek and slim silhouette, I got you. So with your section pieces already cut, instead of spreading the gaps, we will close and overlap them. So on each piece, I'm going to measure 3 inches from the side at the hem. You can do more or less than that according to what you want. Then overlap the skirt section to line up with these markings and tape in place. For the center front panel, we will have that 3-inch measurement and mark 1.5 inches on each skirt piece at the seam. Then connect this new marking to the waist seam and cut these pieces off. And there you have it, a nice slim quarter circle skirt. Super easy, right? Who wants to skip sewing a zipper? I'm sure a lot of you do. So let's see how we can incorporate shirring into the blouse Milkmaid pattern. Start with your 2 back bodice panels. As we've done before, eliminate the seam allowance by measuring 1 inch parallel to the side seam on one of the pieces. Then overlap the other bodice panel to line up with this. First, measure the approximate waist width of the back piece. Mine was about 8 inches. I'm working from a size 8. Draw a line straight across the joined panels, relatively parallel to the hem, but it needs to be a straight line, so not exactly parallel. Separate the pieces and cut them in half vertically. You'll see I have a piece of paper behind. This paper needs to be almost double the width of your piece when it was joined. Next, multiply your back bodice width. Mine was 8 inches. Multiply it by 1.5 or 2. I'm going to do 1.5, and I got 12 inches from that. So I'm drawing a horizontal line across the page and marking my 12-inch width. Place your pieces along this line, lining them up along the line that we drew on the pieces. Make sure the center back and side piece are lined up with the 12-inch marks on either end. Then space the 2 center pieces evenly between them. Draw new lines to connect the top and waist and cut it out. Remove the 1/2 inch or 13mm center back seam allowance so that this piece can be cut on fold. And make sure you label it. And then when you sew this, you would sew your lines of shirring all the way across the back, and make sure that your back hem ruffle peplum is also sewn with elastic so that it also stretches. The sleeve of this pattern has a rounded height so that we get a nice shape when it hugs the shoulder. So if you want a permanent off-shoulder look, you'll want to remove this rounded cap area and essentially make it more straight. And just a heads up that this sleeve piece that I'm using is in half scale. So start by making a horizontal line that is perpendicular to the grain line, 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters above the back notches. This gives the sleeve room to match with the armhole on the bodice. Then add 1/2 inch or 13mm so that you can fold it down to feed through elastic. Then you just smooth out the edges to connect this new height and cut it out. And that is your off-shoulder sleeve. A lot of you have asked me how to adjust this to create shoulder straps instead of the puffy sleeve. So I'm going to show you how to make shoulder straps that tie. You can definitely adapt this to have a shoulder strap that doesn't tie, but this is going to actually be easier to start with. So to start, you want your front and back side bodice panels and your bust cup. I'm going to start with the back piece first. I'm going to trace out the top armhole and side on another piece of paper, then draw a line 1 inch from the armhole following its shape. Do the same on your bodice piece. What we just drew is the sew line. Now we need to add seam allowance to both pieces. On the bodice, add a 1/2 inch to the right for your seam allowance, and on the piece that will become the strap, add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the left. Then to complete the strap, extend this shape about 13 inches or so. If you want to be more exact, measure your shoulder height and add some extra for the tie. Make a nice point if you like, and that is the back strap done. Match sew line to sew line on the strap and bodice, and you'll see how it will look attached to the bodice. We'll repeat these exact steps for the front. If we overlap the seam allowance on the side seams of the bodice and shoulder strap tie, we get a picture of how it will look complete. I haven't tested this, so you may have to adjust the angle of the straps, but the concept is there for you. And lastly, I haven't addressed the seam allowance on the outer edge of the shoulder strap, so I'm adding a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around, just so that it's not too thin of a strap. And I just smooth it into the 1/2 inch seam allowance that we have for where it attaches to the armhole. This is just the way I've done it. I would definitely develop this more. You can decide what kind of seam allowance you want in that area. It's totally up to you. It's bonus time! Time to show you a little tip. Some of you probably already know this, but I'm just going to show you because it really changed the look of my garment. It looks nice and crisp, and I love me some crisp sewing. So what I have here is 2 layers of the center bodice piece, and I have sewn a channel right down the center, so 2 lines of sewing. Then I just get a piece of plastic boning and cut it shorter than the top and bottom seam allowance, and then insert it in this channel. Then I just overlock the edges as if it was one piece and sew the rest of your bodice piece as instructed in my tutorial. Easy and crispy. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something new. You can definitely use some of these principles on other garments and patterns that you might come across. So I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!